I never thought much about fast food jobs before I had one. To me, they were just there. Places you stopped at for a quick meal after school or late at night when nothing else was open. But the fall after I turned 17, I learned a lot more about them. More than I ever wanted to. My name's Rachel Collins, and in 2016, I lived in Ashford, a quiet, middle-class suburb about 20 minutes outside Indianapolis, Indiana. Ashford wasn't the kind of place people wrote news stories about. It was the sort of town where the loudest excitement you'd get was a high school football game or the annual fall festival. People left their cars running while they ran into the gas station. Kids played in the street until the streetlights came on. It felt safe, maybe too safe. I started working at a Burger King off Maple Drive in late September of my senior year. The store was wedged between a half-empty strip mall and a shuttered bowling alley with a faded sign that still promised Cosmic Bowling every Friday from about 15 years ago. It wasn't glamorous work, but I needed money. My parents helped when they could, but my college savings jar wasn't filling itself. And honestly, I thought it might even be kind of fun. Fast food, loud coworkers, the smell of fries in my clothes. Turns out it's less fun and more organized chaos with a smile. By my third month, the days blurred together. Screaming kids running around the dining room, greasy trays, the fryer popping hot oil onto my wrists, managers breathing down our necks to keep the drive-through time under 3 minutes, and customers, dear God, the customers, acting like we'd personally insulted their families if we forgot a ketchup packet. I thought the worst thing I'd have to deal with was a guy yelling at me over a cold Whopper. But on one Saturday in late February, I learned otherwise. That day, I had the 10:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. shift, working front counter and lobby. It was one of those Indiana winter days where the snow had mostly melted, leaving dirty slush piled against the curbs. The air had that damp, metallic cold that stuck to your lungs. By 11:15, the place was packed. People were restless, maybe cabin fever from weeks of bad weather, and the dining room filled up fast. My voice settled into autopilot. Welcome to Burger King. Would you like to try our 2 for $6 deal? Medium or large? Okay, that'll be $8.43. Next, please. Around 1:12 p.m., he walked in. At first glance, there was nothing remarkable about him. Average height, maybe 5 feet 9 inches. Short brown hair, a few flecks of gray at the temples. Early 40s, maybe. He wore a dark green jacket, the canvas kind with a fleece lining. Faded jeans, and scuffed brown work boots that left damp footprints across the tile. If you'd asked me to guess, I'd have said he was a mechanic, or maybe the kind of guy who owned his own small business, fixing water heaters. He stepped up to my register with a friendly enough smile. Afternoon, he said. Hi there, what can I get for you? I replied, smiling automatically. He ordered a Whopper meal, large with a Dr. Pepper, paid in cash. When I handed him his receipt, our fingers brushed and he said, in that overly casual tone people use when they're fishing for a reaction, "You've got a nice smile. Bet people tell you that a lot." I laughed politely. Thanks. I mean it, he said, leaning in a fraction. You seem like someone who likes talking to people. I shifted back a little. I try, I said, still smiling, but it was the fake customer service smile now. He went to sit in the booth under the flickering light in the far corner, the one maintenance had been planning to fix for weeks. The lunch crowd surged. I took at least 50 more orders in the next 20 minutes. But every so often, I glanced toward that corner, and his eyes would be on me. Not an obvious, unblinking stare, but the kind of watchfulness you notice without meaning to. My skin prickled each time. I told myself I was imagining it. When he finished, he brought his tray up to the counter, which was unusual. Most people just left them on the table. He smiled again. Take care, Rachel. I froze. How do you know my... He pointed to my name tag. Right there. Oh, right. Have a good one. And that was that, or so I thought. I clocked out at 5:02, threw on my black hoodie over my uniform, and drove home. My family's 2-story house sat on a cul-de-sac where every driveway looked the same, and the neighbors waved from their porches. Both my parents' cars were gone when I pulled in. I remembered them saying they were taking my younger brother Ethan to see a movie. No big deal. I let myself in, microwaved some leftover lasagna, and flopped onto the couch with my phone. It was 6:07 p.m. when someone knocked on the front door. Not the quick, casual tap of a neighbor. This was 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I frowned. We didn't get unannounced visitors. I walked to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see. My stomach dropped. It was him. Same green jacket, same boots. Only now there was no counter between us. No coworkers. Just me and the locked door. He wasn't looking around, just standing there, hands in pockets, eyes fixed on the door. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but some part of me needed to know what the hell he wanted. I opened the door just a crack, leaving the chain latched. "Can I help you?" I asked. His face lit up, like we were old friends. "Hey, Rachel, didn't think you'd remember me. What are you doing here?" My voice was low, tight. He shrugged. "Thought we hit it off earlier. Figured I'd stop by, see if you wanted to hang out." "Hang out?" My grip tightened on the door. "I don't even know you." "You know me a little," he said, jerking his thumb toward the street. "My car's right there. We could grab something to eat, go for a drive. No pressure." I glanced past him. A silver Toyota Camry sat idling a few houses down. Engine running, headlights off. My blood went cold. "You need to leave," I said, keeping my voice steady. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't be like that." I didn't answer. I started closing the door. "All right," he said, his tone dropping into something darker. "Didn't mean to bother you." I locked every bolt and chain, then went to the side window. He was walking back to his car. He got in, but he didn't drive away. He just sat there. I paced the living room, phone in hand, debating whether to call the police. What would I even say? A man came to my house and is sitting in his car? He hadn't technically done anything. Yet. I texted my mom. Me, "When will you guys be home?" Mom, "Just left the theater. 15 minutes. Why?" Me, "Just wondering." I turned off every light in the house and crouched behind the couch. Every creak in the walls felt like a gunshot. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The Camry stayed put. Finally, headlights swept across the front windows. My parents' SUV pulling into the driveway. I bolted outside before they'd even parked. "What's wrong?" my mom asked. "There's a guy," I said, pointing toward the street. "Been sitting there for almost an hour. He came to the door." My dad's expression hardened. He didn't say a word, just started walking toward the Camry. The engine revved. Tires spun on the slush. The Camry shot forward, disappearing around the corner. That night, my dad called the police. They sent a patrol car around, but nothing came of it. No plate number, no real description beyond average guy in a green jacket. I worked 2 more shifts before quitting. Told my manager I had to focus on school. I didn't mention the man, but I still think about him, about how many people I served that day. Hundreds, maybe. But he remembered me. Not just remembered, he followed me, found where I lived, decided it was okay to show up. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd opened the door wider, or if my parents had been another half hour at the movies. It's easy to forget how close danger can be. Sometimes it's just standing across the counter, smiling like it's nothing. Story 2. I remember the cold first. Not just the regular winter bite, but the kind that crawls under your skin and starts gnawing on your bones like it owns them. It was January of 2012, and I was 20 years old, broke as hell, and just trying to finish a trade school semester without freezing to death or ending up in debt. Tuition was eating me alive. I didn't want student loans chained to my ankle for the next 20 years, so I did what I had to. Grabbed whatever work I could find. Painting porches, clearing snow from church steps, hauling busted appliances down narrow staircases for cash under the table. But none of it lasted. The break came from my Uncle Frank, a wiry, chain-smoking guy who'd been in and out of union jobs since the 80s. He called one night and said one of his buddies could get me onto a demolition crew in a place called Grayford, Pennsylvania. Industrial ghost town. Half the factory shuttered, downtown all but dead. Streets full of potholes big enough to swallow hubcaps. The site was a strip of condemned properties on the edge of Main Street, an old dental office, a dry cleaner's, two restaurants that had been boarded up for years, and at the far end, a squat brick building with faded red trim that used to be a Burger King. I got the job because I was replacing a guy named Eddie. Eddie had slipped off a roof 2 weeks earlier, no harness, no spotter, and shattered his pelvis. The foreman, Gus, said it was Eddie's fault for thinking he was bulletproof. January 19th, a Thursday. The sky was the color of dirty dishwater, heavy with snow that hadn't started falling yet. The wind barreled down empty blocks like it had a grudge against anything warm-blooded. My work gloves might as well have been paper. The crew was a mix, half older guys who'd clearly seen better decades, half younger guys like me who hadn't yet learned to keep their heads down. Not a lot of talking, just nods. Gus was all business. We started at the top floors of the dental office, tearing out drywall, steel studs, ceiling tiles. Everything went down the debris chute into rusted dumpsters. The dust was so thick you could taste it, chalky, metallic, and bitter. By nightfall, the snow came in sideways. Gus pushed us to keep going. 3 days had already been lost to blizzards earlier that month, and the project was behind schedule. We worked until almost midnight under the pale glare of a portable floodlight, the snow swirling like static in the beam. When Gus finally barked, "That's it!" my stomach was chewing itself. Everyone else made for their trucks fast. I didn't have a car, just a city bus pass, so I pulled my scarf over my face and looked for somewhere open. That's when I saw it. Across the slush-crusted street, a Burger King sat wedged between a shuttered cell phone store and a nail salon with plywood over its windows. Its red and brown sign glowed faintly through the snow, like it had been running on backup power for years. The drive-through sign was still lit. A flickering neon open clung to the front window. Everything else on the block was dead. I crunched across the street, boots slipping a little on the frozen gravel under the snow. The glass door gave under my hand without resistance. Inside, the lighting was dim. No ceiling fluorescence, just a tired amber glow from the heat lamps above the counter. The air smelled like fryer oil gone stale and something faintly metallic underneath, like blood or wet pennies. The booths sat empty, dust filmed over their vinyl cushions. A thin kid in a black Burger King polo stood behind the counter. Pale skin, bad acne, eyes like wet cement. His name tag said Kyle in faded Sharpie. "You guys still open?" I asked, halfway to expecting him to say no. He nodded once. The motion was too slow, too deliberate. "Grill works, fryer works. What do you want?" His voice had no rise or fall to it. Whopper meal, large fries, Coke, no pickles." "Okay." I pulled out my wallet, but he raised a hand. "Registers down, on the house." That should have made me think twice, but I was too hungry and too cold to care. I mumbled a thanks. Kyle vanished into the back. Oil hissed. Something heavy dropped into hot grease. Then from deeper in the kitchen, I heard another voice. Low, wet, not speaking so much as grinding out sounds. A shape moved in the shadows back there. Tall but bent at the waist, arms too long for its body. One pale, gnarled hand, fingers knotted like roots, reached forward and passed Kyle a grease-stained bag. Kyle returned without comment. "Here you go." The bag was warm, grease spots already seeped through. The Coke in my other hand was ice cold. I sat in the booth nearest the window. The tabletop was sticky with something dark, almost brown-red. I wiped it with a napkin, assuming no one had cleaned in weeks. The fries were crisp and steaming. The burger, smoky, juicy, better than any fast food I'd had in years. Hunger made it easy not to think too hard. When I finished, I tossed my trash and glanced back at the counter. Kyle was gone. The snow outside was thicker now, swallowing the street. I pulled my scarf up and headed for the bus stop. A few people waited there. A guy in scrubs, a middle-aged woman in a fur-trimmed coat, a teenage kid bundled so tight he looked like a marshmallow. When I joined them, they all glanced at me and then quickly looked away. The bus came, nearly empty. I sat halfway back. The lights hummed overhead. That's when I noticed. Every so often, someone glanced at me. Quick, darting looks. The woman clutched her purse tighter. The kid changed seats. Even the driver looked up in the mirror. I figured maybe I smelled like sweat and drywall dust. When I got home, I stripped off my jacket and vest. My white undershirt was stained, dark red. I rushed to the bathroom. In the mirror, blood coated my mouth, streaking down my chin and onto my shirt like a bib. My teeth were clean. My gums weren't cut. No pain, no metallic taste, no explanation. The Burger King was next on our demolition list. Only this time, it was dead. Boarded windows, dark sign, parking lot chained off, snow piled untouched. Inside, it looked like nothing had worked in years. Fryers rusted solid, rats in the bread racks, the whole place reeking like wet copper and spoiled meat. In the basement, we found old freezers, powerless for God knows how long. What was inside wasn't beef. Cops came. Hazmat came. Gus told us not to talk about it, but I remembered that night. Kyle's dead eyes, the thing in the shadows, the blood on my face. My phone rang. Unknown number. The voice said they worked for a private security group that dealt with unusual commercial incidents. They'd been monitoring the Grayford demolitions. They wanted to talk about future contracts. I hung up, but I've been thinking since about how many other shuttered places light up again when the snow falls and the streets go quiet, about fryers that still work even when nobody living turns them on, and about the next time I might see a red and brown sign glowing through the storm. Story 3, I hadn't planned on eating out that day. I'd been trying to save money, cooking at home as much as possible, but the truth is, I was bone-tired, drenched in sweat, and the thought of standing over a stove made me want to collapse. It was late June in Red Valley, a small city in Arizona, where summer feels like living inside a hairdryer. The asphalt ripples in the heat, car seats can give you second-degree burns, and even the wind feels like it's coming from an oven. By 3 p.m., the temperature had climbed past 104 degrees, and I was running on fumes. I work at Millstone Auto Repair, just off I-27, 12-hour shifts in coveralls that trap every bit of heat. That day had been wall-to-wall tire rotations, brake jobs, and customers whose AC had quit in the worst possible week. By the time my boss told me to clock out, my shirt was sticking to my back, my hands were black with grease, and my stomach was a hollow ache. Home was 15 minutes away, but halfway there, I spotted the Red Valley Burger, a squat, sun-faded building wedged between a pawn shop and an abandoned laundromat. The neon sign was half burned out, and the drive-through speaker had been busted for years. Still, the food was decent, cheap, and most importantly, fast. I almost drove past, but the hunger won. The moment I pushed open the door, the smell hit me. That heavy blend of sizzling oil, grilled beef, and too sweet ketchup that somehow always makes my stomach growl. The air conditioner was struggling, the hum of the fans barely cutting through the heavy heat trapped inside. The place was packed. 2 kids were fighting over a booth near the window while their mother scrolled on her phone. A group of construction workers in reflective vests stood in line, helmets under their arms. Somewhere in the corner, a man in scrubs leaned over a table, eating like he hadn't had a break all day. I joined the end of the line, my boots sticking slightly to the greasy tiles. From behind the counter, I could see the staff hustling. Fry baskets hissed, timers beeped, and orders were being called out rapid fire. The cashier, a pale young woman with a chestnut braid and dark circles under her eyes, was tapping furiously on the register. It took nearly 10 minutes before I stepped up to the counter. Cashier: "Hey, welcome to Red Valley Burger. What can I get you?" Me: Number 4 combo, Coke, no ice, no pickles on the burger." She nodded, punching in the order. "That'll be $9.82. I slid my card, stepped to the side, and sipped from the lukewarm water bottle I'd brought from work. My feet ached. I could almost taste the fries already. 5 minutes later, my order number, 82, flashed on the screen. I stepped forward, and a tall, broad-shouldered man came from the kitchen holding my bag. His name tag read Derek. He didn't smile, didn't say a word, just extended the bag toward me. I reached out, murmured a quick, "Thanks," and turned toward the door. Halfway there, I realized my right bootlace had come undone. Not wanting to trip in the parking lot, I stepped over to an empty table near the exit, set my bag down, crouched and tied it. When I stood back up, he was there. Derek, standing barely a foot away, eyes fixed on mine, jaw tight. Derek, you didn't say thank you. His voice was low, but there was a strange edge to it. Not hurt, not annoyed, but accusatory. Me. I did. I thought I did. But thanks. His expression didn't change. Derek. Too late. Me. Sorry? Derek. That's not how this works. You think you can just take your food and walk off like I'm invisible? Me. No, man, I wasn't trying to be rude. It's been a long day. Before I could finish, he reached out, grabbed the bag off the table, and without hesitation walked 3 steps to the trash can. The bag hit the bottom with a dull thud. For a second, I just stood there. My brain was slow to catch up. Me. Why would you? Derek. Next time, treat people like human beings. He didn't wait for a response. He turned, pushed through the double doors back into the kitchen. I could feel people staring. A teenage boy near the soda machine gave a low whistle. Someone at the booth by the window muttered, "What the hell was that about?" I walked back up to the counter, trying to keep my voice calm. A different employee, short, Latina, visor tilted back, and stepped forward. Her. Can I help you? Me. Yeah, your coworker just threw my food away. Said I didn't thank him. I did, but even if I hadn't, that's not okay. Her expression flickered. Confusion, recognition, then discomfort. Her. Was it Derek? Me. Tall, beard, tattoos on his forearms? She sighed. Yeah, I'm sorry. He's not a manager. He just acts like he is. You're not the first person he's done this to. Me. Okay, can I get my order remade? I paid for it. She nodded quickly. Of course, give me a sec. She'd barely started tapping on the register when Derek reappeared. Derek. What's going on? Her just remaking. Derek. No, you're not. I told him to leave. He's banned. I stared. Banned? For what? Derek. For disrespect. You don't come in here and treat people like crap. Me. You followed me to a table and threw away my food. I didn't curse at you. I didn't yell. I thanked you. Derek. Too late. Get out. The cashier looked like she wanted to disappear. I held up my hands. Fine. Keep the food. I'll go. But you seriously need to get help for your anger issues. Wrong thing to say. His eyes narrowed, his whole face tightening. He took a step toward me. I didn't wait to see what came next. I turned, pushed through the door, and made for my car. My pulse was hammering. Halfway across the lot, I heard the door slam open. Derek. Hey! I turned. He was coming toward me, fast. Derek. You got something to say? Say it to my face. Me. I already did. I said I was sorry if I didn't thank you. I said you're overreacting, and now you're following me outside. That's harassment. Derek. I'll do more than that if you keep running your mouth. He was 10 feet away now. I yanked my car door open. Come any closer, I'm calling the cops. He stopped, breathing hard, then with both hands flipped me off. Derek, you're lucky I'm at work. I got in, locked the doors, and reversed out. He stood there watching me until I pulled onto the street. That night, I filed a complaint with Red Valley Burger's corporate office. I got a polite copy and paste email 3 weeks later saying they were looking into the matter. No apology, no explanation. I never went back. Now, even when I pass a burger joint, there's this strange, tight feeling in my chest. Not from the food, but from the knowledge that sometimes the scariest encounters don't come from dark alleys or abandoned houses. They come from people. People who carry a storm inside them, just waiting for a spark. And sometimes the spark is as small as forgetting to say thank you. Story 4. I was 16 when it happened, a junior in high school, the kind of kid who tried to keep life balanced between homework, friends, and basketball practice. I played for the junior varsity team at Brookford High, a school that smelled like floor polish and dusty textbooks, The kind of place where the trophy cases outshine the lockers because the last state championship was the only thing anyone here ever bragged about. Brookford itself was, well, calling it a town felt generous. Population just under 12,000, two stoplights on Main Street, and a downtown so hollow you could roll a bowling ball through it without hitting a soul. Most people worked either at the paper mill by the river or commuted 40 minutes to a logistics warehouse off the interstate. You could stand on one end of town and practically see the other, past the gas stations, the shuttered movie theater, and a handful of mom-and-pop diners that somehow never closed despite having zero customers whenever I passed by. For me, basketball was my escape. Not because I had dreams of going pro, I wasn't even our best point guard, but because it was structure. Practice was a reason to stay late at school, to be surrounded by noise, to not go home to a quiet house where my dad was usually sleeping before his night shift at the mill, and my mom was halfway through her evening cleaning route at the elementary school. Because we only had two gyms for too many teams, practice times rotated. Mondays and Wednesdays, JV got the early slot. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we got the dreaded late shift, 7 to 9:30 p.m., which meant by the time we were done, the building was mostly empty except for a janitor pushing a squeaky mop. That Thursday night in late March started like any other. Coach had us running suicides for what felt like half the practice because, in his words, "You play like you want me to cut you." My legs were jelly, my shirt soaked through. When we finally wrapped, it was 8:50 p.m., a rare early dismissal, nearly 40 minutes before my mom was supposed to pick me up. That's when the first little problem hit. My phone was basically a brick. No service, no data, no text going through. I'd burned through my plan watching March Madness highlights during lunch earlier in the week. I tried connecting to the school Wi-Fi, but they'd changed the password after some kid got caught downloading movies. That was Brookford High for you. Everything locked down like we were in a low-security prison. I thought about just sitting outside the gym until Mom showed, but the cold March air nipped through my hoodie the moment I stepped out. And then I remembered, the Burger King across from the old library. 10-minute walk, tops. They had Wi-Fi, heat, and, if I was lucky, a $1 menu burger to hold me over. The streets were dead quiet. Every so often a car passed, headlights sweeping over cracked sidewalks and leaning telephone poles. I cut across the football field, hopped the short chain-link fence, and followed the side street toward the glow of the gas station next to Burger King. That gas station always reeked faintly of diesel fuel, even from the sidewalk. A pair of teens in hoodies loitered near the ice machine, laughing about something I couldn't hear. Beyond it, the Burger King sat half-lit under a flickering sign that buzzed louder than it glowed. Inside, the place was almost empty. The air smelled faintly of old fryer oil, like it had soaked into the walls years ago. The soda machine hissed and sputtered behind the counter. A middle-aged cashier with tired eyes stood scrolling through her phone until she noticed me. "Hey, how's it going?" she asked in that automatic customer service tone. "Good," I said, pulling out a crumpled 5 from my backpack. "Can I get a cheeseburger and a small Sprite?" "Sure thing." She tapped at the register, handed me a receipt, and disappeared into the kitchen. I turned toward the dining area, and that's when I noticed him. He was in the far corner booth, half swallowed by shadows. Hood up, head tilted forward so I couldn't see his face at first. He sat unnaturally still, elbows on the table, hands pressed together like he was either praying or hiding his mouth. I tried not to stare. Brookford wasn't exactly the safest place, but it wasn't unusual to see someone sitting alone late at night. Drifters, regulars, people killing time until their ride came. The cashier came back, set my tray down with a polite nod, and went into the back again. I picked a booth near the window, close enough to see the parking lot, far enough from the corner guy to feel like we had personal space. I connected to the Wi-Fi and shot my mom a quick message. "Practice ended early, at Burger King. Can you come now?" She replied almost instantly. "On my way." 10 to 15 minutes. Relief loosened my shoulders. I took a bite of my burger, lukewarm but edible, and scrolled through Instagram. For a minute, it felt normal. Then I heard the scrape of a chair. I looked up casually. Didn't want to seem jumpy. The man from the corner was standing now, taller than I'd guessed, maybe 6'2", wiry. His jeans were dirty at the knees, and this was the first thing that really stuck out. He was wearing sunglasses. At night. Indoors. He didn't look at me right away, just stood there as if deciding where to go. Then he turned, slow and deliberate, and walked straight toward my booth. My throat tightened. Maybe he was headed to the bathroom. Maybe he was leaving. But no, he slid into the seat across from me. Up close, I could see his hair was greasy, clumped in strands that stuck out from under the hood. The sunglasses were oversized, covering most of his upper face. His lips were pale, almost gray, pressed into a thin line. Hey, I said, forcing my voice steady. How's it going? Nothing. I glanced toward the counter. The cashier was gone again, probably in the stockroom. I'm, just waiting for my mom. She's picking me up soon. I said it louder than necessary, hoping he'd get the hint. Still nothing. His chest rose and fell slowly, like he was listening to something far away. I grabbed my phone and pretended to scroll, but my fingers trembled against the screen. Well, nice talking to you, I said, standing up. Have a good night. No response. I walked to the door, trying not to look like I was in a hurry. The bell above it gave a weak ding as I stepped out into the cold air. Halfway across the lot, I risked a glance back. He was following me, not running, not even walking fast, just keeping a steady pace, 50 feet behind. I crossed the street toward the school. So did he. I sped up. So did he. When I reached the school, it was dark, locked up tight. I circled the building, hoping for a janitor, a coach, anyone. Nothing. Every door was shut, every window black. By the time I looped back to the front, my pulse was hammering. And then, thank God, headlights swept over me. My mom's car, pulling into the Burger King lot across the street. I bolted, sprinting full tilt, backpack thumping against my shoulders. I tore across the intersection and into the lot. I yanked open the passenger door and threw myself inside. Go, I gasped. Please, just drive. Mom didn't ask. She saw my face, shifted into reverse, and peeled out. In the side mirror, I saw him, standing at the edge of the lot, not chasing, just watching as we drove away. I never saw him again. No news reports, no police updates. I didn't even tell anyone at school. What could I say? That a man in sunglasses sat across from me and followed me into the night without a single word? But even now, years later, I can still see that blank stare. The way he moved, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew I'd run. Sometimes in the quiet moments, I wonder what would have happened if my mom had been just a minute later. And I never go back to that Burger King. Story 5. I never planned on coming back to Milford. Truth is, I swore the day I left I'd never set foot in this part of Missouri again. The place had a way of shrinking you down, making you feel like the world outside was moving ahead while you were stuck knee-deep in the same muddy river. Watching everything pass you by. But that was 3 years ago, before the pandemic, before my dad's stroke, before my savings dried up like spilled soda on a summer sidewalk. Now here I was, back in the same dying county with $42 in my bank account and a Corolla that rattled every time I hit 30 miles per hour. When you're broke, you stop worrying about dream jobs or career paths. You just need someone willing to hand you a paycheck without asking too many questions about your last employment. That someone turned out to be Jerry Langston, the owner of King's Burger number 214, a squat brick and yellow building sitting like a tombstone at the edge of Highway 59. No drive-through, no playground, just a faded sign with a plastic crown bolted to the top and the kind of parking lot where weeds broke through the cracks in the asphalt. Jerry was in his early 50s, wiry, pale, hair always pushed back like he'd just run his hand through it. He smelled perpetually of fryer oil and menthol cigarettes. Night shift's dead easy, he'd told me during the interview. Nobody comes out here after 10. Keep it clean, keep it open. Try not to fall asleep, and you'll do fine. I told him I like quiet. He grinned, revealing one crooked tooth. Oh, you'll get plenty of quiet out here. And for the first 6 nights, he was right. My shift started at 6 in the evening and ended at 3 in the morning. The routine was mindless. Stock the napkin dispensers, wipe down the counters, refill the soda machine syrup. Between customers, if there were any, I'd sit in the corner booth with my phone and scroll through job boards, pretending there was something better waiting for me. The air conditioning barely worked, and the July heat crept in like a living thing. By the time it was midnight, the air felt thick enough to chew. Bugs threw themselves at the neon lights outside, making a sound like distant rain. Most nights I saw maybe 2 or 3 customers, a long-haul trucker grabbing a burger before hitting the interstate, a family stopping for a bathroom break, once a group of drunk college kids who wanted selfies under the plastic crown on the sign. That was all, until the night of the storm. July 28th started hot and stayed hot. The sky was swollen with gray clouds, low enough to feel like you could reach up and touch them. Thunder kept rumbling far away, but never close enough to break the heat. By 11:20 p.m., the parking lot was empty, and the highway looked like it had been swallowed whole by the dark. Jerry came out of the back office, counting the till. "Storm will keep folks off the road," he said. "Might not see another soul till morning." "Lucky me," I said, pulling my sweat-soaked t-shirt away from my back. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he stuffed the bills back into the register, grabbed his keys, and gave me a half wave. "Don't fall asleep on me." I watched his taillights vanish into the black mouth of Highway 59. By midnight, the place was so quiet I could hear the hum of the soda machine over my own breathing. I leaned against the counter, staring out at the parking lot. The neon crown atop our sign buzzed and flickered, bathing everything in a sickly yellow light. That's when I heard it, a low, heavy thump, followed by silence. Curiosity got the better of me. I stepped outside into the soupy night air, and the heat wrapped around me like wet plastic. 20 feet down the road, something lay sprawled across the asphalt. A possum, or what used to be one. Its midsection was torn open, innards spilling slick and red under the glow of the neon crown. One eye stared up, glassy and wide, as if it had been frozen mid-scream. "Poor bastard," I muttered, nudging it gently off the asphalt with my shoe. The thing landed in the dirt with a dull thud. I stood there for a second, trying to shake the image from my head. When I turned back toward the restaurant, my stomach went cold. There was someone inside. He stood just inside the counter, perfectly still, like he'd been carved there. The first thing I saw was the crown, not shiny, but warped and sun-faded, too small for his head. Beneath it, a velvet robe with gold trim, stained dark in places, and on his face, a rubber mask molded into a frozen grin. The door chime rang as I stepped in. His head turned slowly toward me. "I thought this place was dead," he said. His voice was deep, metallic, like it was coming through an old speaker. "We're open," I managed. "What can I get you?" "Fries, double king burger, large cola." He paused, tilting his head. "And maybe the keys to your castle, peasant." I gave a nervous laugh. "Restrooms in the back. No keys needed." He nodded once and walked toward the bathroom, boots hitting the tile with a dull, deliberate thud. I made his food. 10 minutes passed. No sign of him. "Sir, your order's ready," I called, knocking on the bathroom door. The door creaked open. He stepped out, and my skin prickled. His robe was damp now, clinging to his frame. His pale hands were smeared dark at the fingertips. Without a word, he crossed the room and sat in the corner booth. He unwrapped his burger, reached into his robe, and pulled out something wet and red. It took me a moment to understand. Entrails. Fresh. "What the hell is that?" I asked. "King's Special," he said, his voice almost cheerful. He stuffed the mess into the burger and began to eat. Loud, wet chewing. The smell hit me like a punch. Copper and rot. I turned and stumbled into the bathroom. The sink was streaked with drying blood. Clots stuck to the porcelain. That's when I heard the scream. I bolted to the front doors. Headlights glared from the roadside. A car had slammed into the tree line, the driver's side door hanging open. The man in the crown was standing beside it. I crept closer. Inside, a woman sat slumped over the wheel, blonde hair matted dark. Her face was, wrong, torn in ways faces don't tear. "Oh, Jesus!" The man turned toward me. Even with the mask, I could feel him smiling. Never had human roadkill before, he said softly. Maybe it's time. Then he bent down and began to feed. I screamed. The ground rushed up to meet me. When I woke, red and blue lights strobed overhead. A paramedic leaned over me. "You're safe," he said. But he was wrong. The police said the woman had died instantly from the crash. That didn't explain the missing pieces of her face. They checked the security footage. It showed the man arriving, ordering, walking to the bathroom. Then, static. When the image returned, he was standing in the corner booth, waving at the camera. No fingerprints, no ID. Just the mask, found half buried in the dirt behind the building. I still work some nights, but never alone, because kings don't give up their crowns. And somewhere out there, he's still hungry. Story 6. I used to think the scariest thing about working in fast food was burning your hands on the fryer or dealing with drunk teenagers at the drive-thru. That was before the night everything changed. Before I learned that the real horror comes quiet, dressed in something ordinary, and asked for things you didn't even know could make your stomach turn inside out. I wasn't supposed to be working at all that year. 3 months earlier, I was still in my sophomore year at St. Clarendon University in Boston, a private liberal arts school where the dorms smelled like espresso and old money, and the only jobs anyone had were unpaid internships their parents set up for them. My dad, William Fairchild, was a mergers and acquisitions guy for a mid-tier investment bank in New York. My mom, Elaine, didn't work, unless you count Pilates, volunteering on charity boards, and refreshing our kitchen every 3 years as a job. Summers were for Cape Cod, winters for Aspen, the kind of life you don't think about losing. Then October happened. Dad's firm got swallowed in the tail end of a banking crisis that was still tearing through the financial sector. No bailout, no rescue, just pink slips. One day we were still talking about replacing the sailboat. The next, the Manhattan condo was on the market and the family Range Rover was being repossessed. I didn't even get the news from Dad. Mom called me between classes. Her voice was cracked in a way I'd never heard before. "Sweetheart, you need to come home. We can't afford your tuition anymore." 2 weeks later, I was back in our hometown, a nowhere place outside Providence, Rhode Island, called Green Hollow. We were living in my uncle's old Cape-style house that smelled faintly of mothballs and damp wood. My parents were trying to figure things out. I was 20 years old, broke for the first time in my life, and sleeping in a room lined with cardboard boxes and my aunt's collection of creepy ceramic angels. It was winter when I started at Crown Burger, the only fast food chain in town that was still hiring. I'd never worked a real job before. The first week, I burned myself on the grill twice, forgot to clock out one night, and had to Google how to count back change because the register froze. The other employees could smell my inexperience a mile away. But over time, I learned. Double shifts, cleaning grease traps, enduring customers who treated you like furniture. And slowly, I earned their respect. The late-night crew became my people. There was Reggie, the shift manager, ex-Navy, buzz cut, and a kind of calm authority that made customers behave without him ever raising his voice. Tina on front counter, fast with a joke, and even faster with an eye roll for rude customers. And Luis on freeze, always humming old R&B under his breath. Friday nights were always ours. We closed the lobby at midnight, but the cleaning dragged on till 1 or 2. There was a comfort to it. The hum of the fryers cooling, the smell of bleach, the quiet rhythm of teamwork. That night in February, it was just past 11:20 when the door chime went off. I was wiping down the prep station when Tina looked up and said, "Welcome to Crown Burger. What can I get started for you tonight?" The man who stepped in didn't stand out at first. Late 30s, average build, weathered hoodie pulled over his head, dark jeans. He stood under the flickering fluorescent by the menu board, eyes scanning it slowly. His lips moved faintly, like he was rehearsing something. "2 double cheeseburgers, please," he said finally. "All right, anything else with that?" Tina asked. He paused. "No buns, no cheese, no bacon." Tina hesitated, typing. "Okay, so just the beef patties." "Yes," he said, "but I need them raw, not grilled, just as they are." The kitchen went still. I stopped mid-wipe. Louis froze with the fry scoop in his hand. Tina frowned. Sorry, did you say raw? That's correct. I don't want them cooked, just the raw patties wrapped up. I stepped over from the grill. I'm sorry, sir, but we can't serve raw meat. It's against health code. He looked at me then, and it was like ice sliding down my spine. Not threatening exactly, but wrong. His eyes were pale, cloudy almost, like something had been drained out of them. You've heard of steak tartare, haven't you? He asked, voice flat. Sure, I said carefully, but this isn't a steakhouse. It's policy. We have to cook the burgers. He smiled. The smile didn't reach his eyes. Is there a manager I could speak to? Reggie must have been listening because he stepped out from the back, drying his hands on a towel. I'm the manager tonight, he said evenly, and she's right. We don't serve raw meat. The man sighed, then, smooth as anything, pulled a folded stack of bills from his hoodie pocket. Hundreds. Crisp. Too crisp. How much would it take? For a moment, no one moved. Louise stopped breathing. Tina's hand stilled on the register. Reggie looked at the money, then at me. Check the walk-in, he said in a low voice. It wasn't a request. It was code. In our store, that meant leave. Now I walked toward the cooler, heart pounding, but not before glancing over my shoulder. The man was still watching me. I pretended to check expiration dates, but I stayed near the door. 5 minutes later, Reggie came in, wordless, and shoved something into my hand. $300 bills. This never happened, he said. You gave it to him? I whispered. He didn't answer. Just walked out the back for a smoke. My stomach felt hollow. I told Luis I needed 5 minutes, grabbed a cigarette from the break room stash, even though I didn't smoke, and stepped out into the freezing alley. The man was still in the parking lot, sitting in a battered silver Corolla. Engine idling. That's when I saw it. He unwrapped the grease-stained paper. Inside were the raw patties, blood seeping into the wrapper. He lifted one to his face, not to eat, to smell. He inhaled like it was a bouquet, eyes closed, lips parting just slightly. I froze. The cigarette trembled between my fingers. Then, stupidly, I leaned forward just enough to see through his side window. His eyes snapped open. He locked onto mine in the mirror. The change was instant. A flicker, then a sharp mechanical shift. He started the car and peeled out, tires shrieking, the wrapper still in his hand. I bolted back inside. Reggie, I gasped, cornering him by the mop sink. That guy wasn't eating it. He was doing something else. Something wrong. His hand clamped on my arm. You say nothing. Not to corporate, not to the franchise owner. Nothing. You understand me? His voice was tight, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw fear in his eyes. Not of the man, but of something bigger. I nodded, too shaken to argue. We never saw the man again, but the weirdness didn't stop. 2 nights later, the phone rang at 12:40 a.m. Luis picked up. Silence. The next week, Tina swore she found a raw patty on the hood of her car in the parking lot. One morning, we came in to find a burger wrapper by the dumpster, soaked in something dark and sticky. Then one Monday, Reggie didn't show up. No call, no text. Corporate said, family emergency. I didn't believe it. His locker was empty except for one thing. A photo of a young woman, maybe early 20s, with a smile so alive it almost hurt to look at. On the back, written in jagged black ink, she asked too many questions. I never closed at Crown Burger again because horror isn't always blood and screaming. Sometimes it's a man in a hoodie at 11:20 p.m. asking for raw meat. And the way you just know, he's not the only one. Story 7. I never thought a fast food job could stick to me the way a scar does. It's been 3 years since it happened, and still, every time I lock a door, any door, I find myself glancing over my shoulder like something might be there. Back in the fall of 2020, I was just trying to survive. Rent was eating up most of my paycheck. My 2004 Toyota Corolla coughed like a dying animal every time I turned the key, and I couldn't afford to be picky about work. I'd been at the Wendy's off Route 62, about 20 minutes outside Chillicothe, Ohio, for almost a year. It wasn't much to look at, just a low brick building with a faded sign sitting between a Marathon gas station and an abandoned car wash. Daytime business was decent. Families, farmers, commuters. But after dark, we might get a couple of truckers or late shift nurses grabbing food on their way home. I worked the evening shift, 4 p.m. to close, which meant I was there for the dead hours, the mop water, and the last-minute rush of people who acted like closing time didn't exist. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I liked the routine. Clock in, make fries, clean, deal with the occasional angry customer who swore their burger was cold, clean again, lock up, leave. That night, October 29th, 2020, was supposed to be boring. We had already started decorating for Halloween the week before. There were cardboard pumpkins taped to the windows, a cheap plastic skeleton dangling in the corner, and someone had stuck fake vampire teeth on the soda machine lever. That night it was just me, Eli, and Maya on closing shift. Eli was the shift lead, mid-30s, a man who spoke in short sentences and kept his cap pulled low. Maya was our grill cook, quick with sarcasm, and the only person who could make me laugh during a dinner rush. The first few hours were nothing, just the occasional drive-through order, a couple of walk-ins. By 9:30, the place felt like a ghost town. I was out in the dining area sweeping under the booths when I saw something. Not someone walking in, not the door chime, just movement. A figure crouched low between the last booth and the wall near the drink station. At first, I thought it was one of the Halloween props, maybe a prank from Maya. But then it shifted. I froze, my hand tightening around the broom handle. Hello? My voice cracked. The person didn't answer. They were curled tight, head down, arms wrapped close to their sides. Dark hoodie, ripped jeans. Couldn't see the face. Jamie? Maya's voice came from the kitchen. You good out there? There's someone in the dining room, I called back. Before Maya could respond, the figure moved. Not toward the door, toward the counter. Fast. Hey, you can't be back there, I shouted, stepping toward the register area. The man, because I could tell now it was a man, didn't look at me. His voice came out sharp, desperate. Don't come over here. I mean it. Something in the way he said it, tight, shaking, made me stop cold. Eli stepped out from the back, holding the deposit bag. He froze when he saw the man behind the counter. What the hell's going on? I swallowed. There's a guy, he's trying to get into the register. Eli didn't hesitate. We're leaving, now. We backed toward the kitchen, shoes squeaking on the just-mopped floor. Maya was already grabbing her jacket. Out the back door, into the cold October air. My hands were slick with sweat, even though my skin felt numb. Maya ran straight to her car. Eli jumped into his truck and sped off without a word. Me? I stayed. I couldn't explain why. Maybe some part of me didn't want to leave until I knew what was happening. From the safety of my Corolla parked a few spaces away, I watched through the front windows. The man was at the register now, slamming the drawer, punching buttons. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man inside the Wendy's on Route 62, I whispered. He's behind the counter. He was hiding in the dining room until we closed. He's trying to open the register. Are you inside? The dispatcher asked. Number, I'm outside. He doesn't know I'm here. She kept me on the line while I watched. Every nerve in my body screamed to start the car and drive away, but I stayed. 5 minutes felt like an hour. Then, headlights, one cruiser, then another, a third. 3 officers went in with guns drawn. Less than 2 minutes later, they walked him out in cuffs. Up close, he looked younger than I expected. Maybe mid-20s, pale, twitchy. One officer, Rachel Howard, came over to my car. You the one who called? Yeah. My voice shook. You did the right thing. He had a screwdriver in his pocket and a knife taped under his sweatshirt. Said he came in earlier, waited until you were closing, planned to grab the cash once you all left. My stomach turned. That register? It had been empty since Eli's drop. He'd been willing to threaten or hurt us for nothing. Management added a closing sweep rule after that. 2 people in the dining room before locking up. Doors locked earlier if business was slow. Didn't matter. The damage was done. For weeks, I'd see that crouched figure every time I turned a corner at work. Even at home, if I left a room dark, I'd imagine someone waiting in the shadows. 2 months later, I quit. Told them it was for school, but the truth was simpler. I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unfeel that moment when I realized someone had been inside the whole time, watching us, waiting for the perfect second to strike. Sometimes now, if I'm alone in a quiet place, especially at night, I'll think about that night, and I'll check over my shoulder. Story 8. I woke up to the sound of my upstairs neighbor dragging furniture across the hardwood floor. Again. It was barely noon, but the light filtering through my blinds felt heavy and colorless, as if the sun itself was tired. My mouth tasted like old coffee, and the weight in my limbs made it hard to swing my legs out from under the blanket. Another day. I work nights at an auto parts distribution center just outside Ashford. The pay isn't bad, but it's the kind of job that carves hours out of you, like someone is slowly hollowing you out with a spoon. I've been there 18 months, and I still haven't gotten used to sleeping when everyone else is awake. My friends joke that I'm a vampire now, but there's nothing glamorous about folding laundry in the middle of the night because your body refuses to rest. I'm Alex, 27, not married, no kids. My life fits into the space between my car trunk and my small one-bedroom apartment. The only person I see on a regular basis is my roommate, Tyler, a guy I knew vaguely from high school who needed a place after his breakup. That day, Tyler was already in the kitchen, frying something that smelled like eggs and bacon. He's one of those rare morning people who never seem to lose steam. "Morning, sunshine," he said without looking up from the pan. "It's past noon," I mumbled, rubbing my eyes. "Yeah, for you, that's morning. Rough shift?" "They're all rough." I grabbed a glass and poured water, gulping it down. Tyler glanced at me. "You're still doing overnights this week?" "Yeah, 10 to 6. He shook his head. "You should eat before you go. You look like you're running on fumes." I forced a smile. "I'll grab something on the way home." The shift was like every other. Hours of scanning inventory, moving pallets, answering the same 3 questions from the same 3 guys on the team. By the time my break rolled around at 3 a.m., my legs ached and my brain felt dipped in syrup. We clocked out at 6 sharp. The air outside was thick with late winter cold, the kind that makes your teeth ache. I walked across the cracked asphalt lot toward my car, watching the vapor of my breath vanish in the faint glow of a flickering street lamp. I was halfway home on Route 9 when my stomach growled loud enough to make me laugh. I'd skipped lunch and dinner, telling myself I'd eat later, and now later was gnawing at me. Most of the places in Ashford shut down early. The all-night diner closed last year. The gas station on Oak Street stopped selling hot food after midnight, but a few miles ahead, glowing like a crown in the darkness, was Burger King, or King's Grill, as the old locals called it, back when it first opened in the 80s. It wasn't the cleanest spot in town, but at that hour, I didn't care. I took the exit, tires crunching on the gritty snow at the edge of the lot. Only 3 cars were scattered across the parking spaces, all spaced far apart, as if they didn't trust each other. That's when I saw him, a tall man, mid-40s maybe, leaning against an old beige sedan near the far corner. His posture was casual, but his head was turned toward me, not in a curious glance, but in the way someone watches a deer step into their yard. I told myself I was imagining it. I parked closer to the entrance, killed the engine, and slung my jacket on. The cold slapped me the second I stepped out. I hit the lock button on my fob and heard the chirp behind me. The man shifted. His boots scraped against the pavement as he stepped away from the car and started toward me. "Hey," he said, voice low, almost too low for the distance. "Can you help me out?" My gut tightened. "What's up?" I asked, keeping my steps slow toward the door. "Just need a little cash," he said quickly. "Ran out of gas. Been stuck here a while." His clothes weren't ragged. Worn, sure, but clean enough. His eyes locked on mine like he was trying to measure something. "Sorry," I said. "I don't carry cash." For a split second, his jaw tightened. Then came a smile, but the kind that only stretches the mouth, not the eyes. "That's all right," he said. "Just watch your car for me, all right?" Something in his tone wasn't a request. I didn't answer. I pulled the door open and stepped inside, the heat and smell of frying oil wrapping around me like a shield. At the counter, a teenager in a paper hat took my order for a Whopper meal. My hands were still cold as I slid my card into the reader. Out of habit, my gaze drifted to the window. The man was next to my car now. He rested one hand on the driver's side handle. I froze. He tugged, locked. He moved to the back door. Tried that too. My pulse thudded in my ears. Then he reached into his coat and pulled something out, small and metallic. I couldn't see clearly through the glare, but it wasn't a key. The first hit came fast, a muffled thunk against the glass. Then another. The third swing shattered the driver's window, the sound sharp enough to make the kid at the counter jump. Shards scattered like ice across the seat. My mouth was dry. My body wouldn't move. He leaned in, rummaging through the glove box. I ducked behind one of the booths, pulling out my phone. 911, the operator answered. I told her everything, my voice too high, too fast. Stay inside, she said firmly. Officers are on their way. Do not go back outside. The manager locked the front door. The handful of customers kept their eyes on the floor, pretending not to notice the tension in the air. I couldn't stop glancing at the window. The man was gone. 2 minutes later, red and blue lights washed over the building. An officer spoke to me, while another checked the car, noting the broken glass in the glove box hanging open. They didn't find him. I drove home with a trash bag taped over the window, the cold rushing in no matter how high I cranked the heat. Every set of headlights behind me made my chest tighten. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't been back to that Burger King since, but sometimes on the drive home, I swear I see that beige sedan in my rear view. Far enough to pretend it's just another car, close enough that I can't forget. And every time I keep driving, because some things, once they find you, don't need to rush. They already know where you'll be. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, I'll see you again with another horror story. Until then, bye.